give, and Davies has scored. What a goal by Davies. In goes Davies, and here comes Foden. It's a goal. And
lob forward for Wyn Davies. That is number 9, and a goal. 36 minutes. Wyn Davies, recently so for
Wyn Davies, the man they rarely honour, but every defender feared. He wasn't there for flair. He wasn't built for praise. He was built to rise when the ball went up and the crowd held its breath. No tricks, no elegance, just force and timing and a head that crushed silence. He didn't ask to be the hero, but when the moment came, he answered. Over 600 appearances, 179 goals. More European silver than some men with statues, but when they tell the stories, his name fades into whispers. He wasn't the headline, he wasn't the favorite, but when Bolton needed muscle, he gave them war. When Newcastle needed Europe, he gave them history. They called him Wyn the Leap, but he didn't just jump. He flew with weight and purpose. And still, they forgot. This isn't a tribute, it's a reckoning. A reminder of a man who gave football his body and never asked for a banner. If you believe respect should last longer than applause, subscribe now. Because today, we speak the name they let slip from the echoes. Wyn Davies, the machine they didn't celebrate, but could never replace. Ronald Wyn Davies was born on 20th of March 1942 in Caernarfon, a Welsh town carved from slate and silence. He didn't grow up wanting fame. He grew up learning how to survive it. There were no academies, no agents, just rough pitches and harder men. He played for Lokomotiv Llanberis, then Caernarfon Town, before football found him the way it used to. By reputation, by noise passed through pubs and touchlines. At just 18, he signed for Wrexham. In 2 seasons, he played 55 league games and scored 21 goals. Not bad for a kid no one scouted. But Wyn wasn't built for the lower leagues. He didn't glide, he thundered. In 1962, Bolton Wanderers came calling. They needed a new number 9, someone to follow the legend Nat Lofthouse. They didn't find a shadow. They found a storm. 4 years, over 150 appearances, 66 goals. Wyn Davies didn't just score. He tore through defenders like they weren't there. He became feared for one thing above all. When the ball went up, he always came down with it. At Burnden Park, he didn't earn fame. He earned silence, the kind that only comes after violence and awe. And from there, the big clubs watched and waited. In 1966, Newcastle United signed Wyn Davies. They didn't just buy a striker, they bought a weapon. He arrived at St. James's Park like thunder rolling in from the hills, tall, fearless, and already forged in battle. Newcastle didn't need flash, they needed force, and Wyn gave them both, in the air. Fans called him Wyn the Leap, because when the cross came in, he didn't jump. He climbed, higher than defenders, higher than gravity wanted. Between 1966 and 1971, he played over 200 games for the Magpies, scored 53 goals, and terrified every centre-half in the country. But it wasn't just England he conquered. In 1969, Newcastle went to war in Europe. The Intercities Fairs Cup, and Wyn Davies led the line. He played through a broken nose, a fractured cheekbone, didn't flinch, didn't fall. Newcastle won, the club's first European title. Wyn didn't lift the trophy for glory, he lifted it because he earned it. No headlines, no Ballon d'Or talk, just steel, headers, and history. He gave Newcastle their golden night. Wyn Davies didn't ask for sympathy, he asked for the ball in the air and a fair fight. Most of the time, he got neither. He played through injuries that would have benched others for weeks. A fractured cheekbone, a broken nose, bruised ribs, no protection, no headlines. In the 1969 Fairs Cup run, he bled for Newcastle. Literally. But you won't find his name in the romantic retellings. Just the final score, just the trophy. He never got a testimonial match. Not at Bolton, not at Newcastle, not at all. He gave everything, and walked away with nothing but scars and the memories of those who still whispered his name. He retired with his head held high, because that's where it always was. But the game moved on. The applause faded, the silence stayed, and still, he never complained. Never asked why, never reminded anyone what they owed him. Because Wyn Davies didn't play for credit. He played for the honor of rising and never backing down. Wyn Davies wore the Welsh shirt with the same silence he brought to war. He didn't beg for glory, he didn't chase caps. But when the call came, he answered. 34 times he stood for Wales. From 1963 to 1973, through wins, losses and long winters with no reward. He scored 6 goals for his country, no hat-tricks, no headlines, just moments that mattered, like the one in 1966 when he scored against England. But there were no tournaments, no major stage. Wales didn't qualify, the team struggled, the nation waited. And through it all, Wyn kept rising for them. Other strikers got the fame, Wyn got the bruises. He led the line for a team that couldn't always match his fight. But he never walked away, never turned his back. Because to Wyn Davies, playing for Wales meant everything. Not because of what it gave him, but because of who he was. Loyal, quiet, unshakable. The red shirt didn't give him parades, but he wore it like a warrior wears armor. And when it was time to step down, he did. With the same dignity he always carried. In 1971, Wyn Davies signed for Manchester City. The name was big, the shirt was iconic. But the fit was wrong. He gave them everything, as he always did. 45 appearances, 8 goals, but the rhythm wasn't right. Wyn was thunder, City wanted jazz. He played alongside legends, Francis Lee, Colin Bell, Mike Summerby, but the system moved without him, and the silence began to grow. By 1972, Manchester United came calling. A new start, a bigger badge. He scored on his debut, made 16 appearances, scored 4 goals, but it didn't last. The game was changing. Smoother, faster, lighter. Wyn Davies was still rising for every cross, but fewer were being sent his way. He didn't complain, didn't chase transfers. He just did what he'd always done. Stood tall, fought hard, and left quietly. At 2 of England's biggest clubs, he got no farewell, no curtain call, just the door. He didn't fit the mold, he broke it. And football doesn't like reminders of what it no longer understands. Wyn Davies came to Manchester carrying power, pride, and history, but he left with only his boots and one more scar the game never saw. After Manchester faded, Wyn Davies kept going, not for headlines, not for legacy, just because he wasn't finished yet. Blackpool came next, then Crystal Palace on loan, then Stockport County, Crewe Alexandra, Bangor City, even a stop in Cape Town, South Africa, a long way from Caernarfon. No parades, no press, just new shirts, new bruises, and the same win. His power was fading, but the instinct was still there, to rise, to fight, to make defenders work for everything. These weren't glamorous moves, but they were honest. And Wyn Davies never saw himself as too big for hard football in smaller places. In the lower leagues, he played for pride, and because the game still called him. Even if the crowds were smaller, he still gave them everything. No anthem played him off. Just a man walking away from the pitch he had given his life to. Not because he was finished, but because football had nothing left to ask of him. When the game let go, Wyn Davies didn't cling to it. He walked away without bitterness and without noise. He moved back to Bolton, the town where he once wore number 9, and found a life that asked nothing more from him. He became a baker. No fame, no books, no speeches, just the kind of work that didn't need headlines. He never tried to become a legend. He just tried to be useful. And for him, that was enough. There are no long interviews, no memoirs, and little is written about his personal life. No public stories of children, just quiet years, and the people closest to him keeping his legacy real. But when he passed, on 17th of July 2025 at the age of 83, one voice broke the silence. His niece, Casey Allsup, said it plainly. He was our family's pride. That was the truth. Not shouted, not scripted, just known. The clubs remembered. They shared his photos, spoke his stats, said he was fearless. But the legacy that matters, the one that lasts, was carried by the people who knew him without the shirt on. Wyn Davies was more than a forward. He was a man who rose quietly and left the same way he entered, with dignity. I've never seen anyone jump like him. That's what Bobby Moncur said. And he played with the best. Wyn Davies didn't fly for applause. He flew because the ball was in the air, and that's where he belonged. He gave clubs everything: goals, blood, years, and left quietly like he always did. No farewell tour, no flash. But ask any defender from the 60s, they still remember the bruises. He wasn't the favorite, he wasn't the name on every list. But when the ball dropped from the sky, Wyn was already there. He didn't chase legacy, he became it. Wyn Davies, the wind behind the goal, the silence behind the noise. Subscribe now if you believe football once belonged to men who didn't speak much, but always rose when it mattered.